Hey guys, welcome to Sawdust and Sparks. Today we're going to be starting on a gate project. Now, never made a gate this size before. I had a client of mine approach me and say that they wanted a 16-foot driveway gate in exchange for some work that he's doing for me. So I sketched something up. This is not the sketch that I gave him, but this is something I put together for the camera. So as you can see, it's two parts. It's going to have kind of a swoopy arch top, a couple with a plasma cut, called a medallion. I don't know what the technical name for it is. Some circle decorative pieces in there, and that's about it. Now, I don't have a way of bending that steel, and I talked to my local steel yard. They said they couldn't do it either. So I've come up with a different way to do it. Hope it turns out. I don't know, I've never done it this way before. Let's get started. So to explain how to make this cut and this angle, this arched piece, I want my arch to go something like that. I mean, this is a little extreme here, but the way we're gonna do that is we are going to cut almost all the way through, except we're not going to cut the flat part. So this is a 1x2. So if you wanted to picture it looking something like that, we're gonna cut the bottom, we're gonna cut both sides. We're not gonna cut this top piece. So we're gonna cut, in my gate here, it was every 6 inches. We're gonna cut, 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 for about half of the distance. Now we want to start changing this from an outside curve to an inside curve. So at this point we switch and we're going to cut down, but not through, every 6 inches. Now the width of the saw blade is what's going to allow it to curve. It's not going to be making these gaps wider so you're filling something. You're actually going to bring these two pieces of metal together. So the widest gap is actually just going to be right there, and that's only going to be the width of the saw blade. Anyway, I'm going to continue that every 6 inches for the rest of the thing. Hope that makes sense. You'll see it here shortly. So here I am starting to cut the 1x2 tubing. As you can see, towards the end of each cut, I rotate the workpiece slightly, and that's because the saw blade is round. If I tried to cut all 3 sides by just plunging the saw into it, I would cut the bottom and not cut the back that's along the fence. So I hope that makes sense. You got to rotate a little bit so you can get a nice, clean, 3-sided cut, which would allow the metal to bend on one flat surface. As you can see, those cuts made it nice and floppy. So hopefully I can get that nice swooping bend that I'm hoping for. Now, of course, the gate has 2 for each side. We've got 1 arch there, 2 arch there, 3 arch there, 4 arch there. So I got to make 3 more. So I made this stonework. As you can tell right now, they're pretty floppy. I cut them on both sides. You can see here, here's the transition. Cut in one direction, cut the other. And that's going to help us get both cuts. So the other thing I did is I cut probably can't see it on the camera. partially too because there's like 6 cuts on one side and 5 on the other, just because of the length of it and how I wanted the curves. So it might be different depending on how you're doing it. So I want to try making sure all these gaps are as even as I can get them, and that's going to make sure that I got a nice gentle curve as opposed to a sharp one here and a less sharp one there. I want it to be as seamless as possible. So that's the theory anyway. So what I'm doing here is I'm just tacking the corners of the square tubing. This will keep it from warping, and then once I get all of the corners tacked, then I can come back and do full welds along the short sides of the tube, and then I'll come back and weld along the long sides of the tubes. You can already see here when I start to take out of the form how much strength just welding it even along one side is giving the piece. Next step is going to be grinding. It's going to wait for a while to do this work. And when it's about probably about an hour and a half to cut and weld all 4 of those. I probably got another 4 hours grinding. That's a big downside to doing the things this way is that there's a lot of grinding involved. Dark to it. I'm trying to see what it's doing for us. But once everything's ground and it's got it all welded up, probably really quick. And care how much, find something better. Anyway, section 1. Okay, it's the next day. Belt was welded up last night. Now for the fun part, grinding them all. Messy, loud, for your eye protection, ear protection. And get at it. So I'm going to use DeWalt, of course, 20 volt with a 40 grit flap wheel on it. Make sure you got a lot of batteries on hand. Just doing the 4 of these, I'll probably go through, I'm guessing 3, maybe 4 batteries. So let's do it to it. Well, that's one. Let's get it up where you can see a little bit better. That was just the first grind on it. I'm going to do a little polishing with the finer grit flap wheel. Anyway, that's how I made the curved pieces for the gate. 3 more to go. We're good. Okay, so now that I got all these cut, welded, and ground, now I'm ready to start assembling them. So let me show you how that's done. Okay, so we're going to buy ourselves a whole bunch. So these are the decorative pieces. They're going to be mounted into the middle of the archway. We're going to do this left arm, but we cut some things. Right on top of it. If you don't know if they're going to 100% lay out, I suggest laying these out first. My quote-unquote welding table here is a piece of plywood, so I know it's exactly 8 feet wide, and that's why I have it laid out in this configuration. So if I take these circles, I believe these are 3.5s. About a 1/4 inch long in this configuration. So a couple different ways to do it. You can barely chop off these of those and weld it to the posts that are going to be going down, or you can take one of them out, space the rest of them in there. I'm going to go with the chop off about a 1/16 of, or maybe an 1/8 off of each end, weld those up, you'll never even know they're there. Let's get to it. So it's worth noting here that if you look, these rings, when you buy them, they're pre-bent, pre-welded. One side has a little tack weld. You can see it right there. Your first weld, if you're going to be welding on this seam, you're going to want to weld it on the opposite side of the tack. And the reason you do that is because if you weld it on the side with the tack, it'll actually melt the tack, and this is under a little bit of spring tension. And as soon as you melt that, it'll separate, and there'll be a 1/8 inch or more gap there. So if you're going to be welding on the seam, make sure your first weld is on the opposite side. That'll hold that together. Make sure your weld spreads across both sides of the seam there. So as I mentioned before, I'm about a 1/4 inch off. So I decided that instead of taking the 1/8 off either end, for a handful of these, I'm just going to take my grinder and I'm just going to knock off like even a 32nd of an inch by the time I actually feel even. top arches of the gate. Now, if you're doing your math and you're counting, you'd realize that there is too many of these archways for one gate, and that's because the customer that I'm building this for called me up and told me that he didn't just want one gate, he wanted 3 gates. So I increased my production a little bit, and I'm making 3 of these identical gates for him. So I'm only going to basically show you build one, so you don't have to suffer through watching me weld and grind 3 gates worth, but that's the plan. Okay, well, it's a new day in the shop, and we're going to get started today by trimming off the ends off of these curved pieces that we made the other day. They go on top of the gate. We'll get them squared up and hopefully make one of the uprights for the inside edges of the 2 gates meet together. There's a little bit of custom work at the top of those. And then hopefully get the frame welded up, and you'll see the actual outside shape of one of the sections of gates, if not more. Let's get to it. So as I mentioned earlier, some of where the 2 posts meet on the inside, I'm going to put kind of a curved spike or something at the beginning just to give the gate a little more detail and architectural style. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do those little peak things. And once I explain it to you and show you, you'll get a better grasp than me explaining it to you. So here's what we got going. Here we have a piece of 1x2 120 wall tubing, and I had this piece left over that I just made this template. Just a little piece of scrap steel, just so all these are the same. Gonna line it up so that this cut is the thickness of the steel itself. I'm gonna go ahead and trace that with a marker. And there we go. If you can see that, that's our cut line. I'm gonna flip it over, do the same thing on the other side. Make sure that they're curving the same way. This one's gonna be the opposite. Just like that, trace it with a marker. There's all types of ways you can cut this. I've found the best thing just to be a simple jigsaw, metal cutting blade on it. So I'm just gonna make sure that I don't wipe my hand across it and erase my cut lines. Make sure you wear safety goggles because this has a tendency to throw stuff up in your face. Okay, next thing you do is you're just going to get a big hammer, BFH. You're going to turn it so the thin part's up, and you go ahead and start pounding that into shape. Okay, and once you get that all welded up, you can kind of clamp it together a little bit more when you're welding. That'll make a nice swoopy top to that gate. All right, it's time to grind. There you go. Okay, I'm starting to lay it out on the floor. Got some tape lines marked out that I know are square. It shows the dimensions, just helps keep everything in line so that all four of these gates are identical. I wanted to show you, well, that's where the spear that we made on the last video, it's going to be up there so that when both of them come together, they're nice and pointed and swooping together. But I wanted to show you this joint real quick. So because I have this 1/4-inch wall tubing, which is kind of really the strength of the gate here. I didn't get any video of it, but it's basically just two pieces of 2x2 quarter wall, cut at a 45, welded together, so there's really not much to show there. However, I don't want the end of the tube fully exposed down here, so I'm going to cut a joint here. I'm just going to cut this out, and then it'll fit over the piece of the 120 wall. 1x2 here will then cover the end of the exposed 2x2 and give it kind of a clean finished look without having to butt weld it and weld an end cap and all that stuff. So let's get that cut out now. As you can see, that fits together nice. Once you get it all welded and ground, it'll look like a 12 piece. So I don't have a full film crew here to do this work. I just want to point out one thing. Make sure you're measuring across. Make sure everything's staying square. You're not going to be able to measure diagonals, but you can definitely check the squareness of your support piece here. And then if you measure across the distance this way, you're going to guarantee that that is straight up and down. That one up there isn't quite as critical because it doesn't need to be square because it's all swoopy. So make sure that you're taking constant measurements because things do like to move around when they're welded. Okay guys, that completes part one of our gate building project. As you can see, we have the entire frame of the gate built. So on the next video, I'll show you how to add all the pickets in between. I'll probably get to the plasma table to cut out the medallion and do a little blacksmithing work to make a support piece for over here. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like and subscribe. A lot of great videos coming your way. Thank you.